The harder Muhammad tries to make Mecca and the Kaaba appear credible and religious, the less credible and religious they appear.
He commanded Adam to go up to the sacred house, which was cast down to earth for him.
What happened to building it and the rocks from the 4 mountains?
And to circumambulate it, just as he used to see the angels circumambulate Allah's throne. The sacred house was a single jewel, I was told. The house was cast down, being a single jewel.
Those last 2 lines confirm something Muslims vociferously deny. A house is a place in which people live. It is unlike a temple, which is a place where people go to worship. Allah's house was a stone. Most pagan gods were thought by their creators to embody the idol that represented them. Allah was no different.
Tabari. Eventually, when Allah drowned the people of Noah, He lifted it up, but its foundation remained. Allah established it as a residence for Abraham, who rebuilt its later form.
That's where all of this was going all along. Muhammad had to introduce Noah and then connect Mecca and Islam to Abraham. Allah's messenger turns both Noah and Abraham into prophets that are indistinguishable from himself. Allah, we are told, drowned everybody because they mocked Noah's message, just as He will burn those who mock Muhammad's. Then He remade Abraham in His image, as a Muslim who was tormented and tested. These things were needed to justify his reliance on the Bible, and to make himself and the Kaaba appear worthy.
Tabari. When we were sitting in the mosque, Mujid said, "Do you see this?" I replied, "You mean the stone?" He said, "You call it a stone?" I said, "Is it not a stone?" He said, "I was told by Abdallah bin Abbas that it was a white jewel that Adam took out of paradise to wipe his tears, tears that did not stop for 2,000 years. I said, "Why and how did it turn black?" He replied, "Menstruating women were touching it in the Jahiliyyah,"
the time of ignorance. Muhammad valued Allah's stone as much as he despised menstruating women. His faithful managed to tie these things together. What you're going to hear next is one of the most diabolical doctrines of Islam. Men and women are born to be tormented. They had no choice in the matter. Eternal damnation is God's doing, not ours.
Tabari. Then Allah rubbed Adam's back and brought forth his progeny, and every living being to be created by Allah to the day of resurrection came forth at Naaman. He scattered them in front of him like tiny ants. He made covenants with them. He took 2 handfuls and said to those on the right, "Enter paradise." And he said to the others, "Enter fire. I do not care."
A loving and merciful God, if there ever was one. But beyond demented, this is further evidence that Allah and Yahweh are opposites. Yahweh wants us to choose to love Him. Allah chose for us, and He doesn't care, much less love. A moment's reflection on this doctrine renders an undeniable verdict. Islam is irrelevant. If all men and women are predestined to heaven or hell, faith is folly. Good works are no more valuable than bad ones. Rituals are ridiculous. Martyrdom is madness. Eat, drink, and be merry, for a backrub sealed our fate.
Tabari. The messenger said, Allah created Adam, and then rubbed Adam's back with his right hand and brought forth his progeny. Then he said, I have created these as the inhabitants of paradise. Then he rubbed his back with his left hand and said, I have created those for the fire, and they will act as the inhabitants of the fire. A man asked, O messenger, how is that? Muhammad replied, when Allah creates a human being for paradise, He employs him to act as the inhabitants of paradise, and he will enter paradise. And when Allah creates a human being for the fire, He will employ him to act as the inhabitants of the fire, and will thus make him enter the fire.
In other words, He didn't have a clue, although He gives us a clue as to what He is like, a peek into His soul, into His religion, and His deity. His God directs the actions of men, good and bad. If you are to believe Muhammad, Allah is the employer of evil, and that's not good. Worse, He directs men to act badly, so that He can punish them for acting as He decreed. Islam confirmed this fatalistic right and left hand stuff in a Bukhari Hadith, and then again in the Quran's 56th Surah.
Bukhari. Every created soul has its place written for him, either in paradise or in the hell fire. His happy or miserable fate is predetermined for him.
The Quran says in 56:8,
Those of the right hand, how happy will be those of the right hand. Those of the left hand, how unhappy will be those of the left hand. Who will be honored in the garden of bliss? A number of the earlier peoples, and a few of the later ages, on couches wrought of gold, reclining face to face. Youth of never-ending bloom,
those are the Islamic perpetual virgins,
will pass round. Cups and decanters full of sparkling wine. They shall not be affected with headache thereby, nor shall they get exhausted.
Sounds like Allah's Viagra.
And such fruits as they fancy, bird meats that they relish, and companions pure and beautiful, with big eyes like pearls within their shells as a reward.
A drunken orgy is the reward for being a right-hander. It's no wonder they find boys willing to die for the cause.
Quran 56, verse 33. Unending and forbidden, exalted beds, and maidens incomparable. We have formed them in a distinctive fashion and made them virgins, loving companions, matched in age, for the sake of those of the right hand.
This view of paradise is so vulgar, demeaning, sexist, and immoral, I find it repulsive. The next time you hear a Muslim say that the God of the Quran and the God of the Bible are the same, remind them of their God's idea of a good time. The next time you hear Muslims condemn the West for its sexual decadence and perversion, ask them to read their Quran. This is the fate the sadistic God of Islam selected and then predestined for the lefties.
Quran 56, verse 41. But those of the left hand, how unhappy those of the left hand! They will be in the scorching hot wind and boiling water, under the shadow of thick black smoke, neither cool nor agreeable. They will be gathered together on a certain day, which,
like their fate,
is predetermined. Then you, the erring and the deniers, will eat zakum.
It's a thorn tree.
Fill your bellies with it and drink scalding water, lapping it up like female camels, raging of thirst and diseased. Such will be their entertainment, their welcome on the day of doom. The welcome of boiling water and the entertainment of roasting in hell. This is indeed the ultimate truth.
According to the
ultimate truth,
only 1 in 1,000 people will avoid
the entertainment of roasting while lapping up thorns and scalding water.
Allah is fixated on tormenting His creation. He speaks of pain and punishment more frequently than any other subject, 1,000 times in the Quran. And if God thinks this is entertaining, we've got a problem. Fortunately for mankind, Allah isn't God. He's just a warped figment of Muhammad's sadistic imagination. And while that's good, it's also bad. Over 1 billion people claim to be subservient to Allah. 60% are young, and many of them are willing to die for their virginal reward.